Hey, hi, how we doing? All right, another week in the books. Scoreboard. There you go. Out of the way a little bit. It was another pretty fun and interesting week, right? We saw some upsets, saw some close games, saw some real good games, and yeah, let's go ahead and get right into it. But hey, first off, right? If you're new, subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff. You guys know the point by now. All right, we had one game on Thursday. That was Ohio and Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. Cajuns roll to a win in this one, and freshman running back Montreal Johnson had himself a game for Louisiana. 13 carries, 84 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So a really impressive performance from the freshman this week. What's the deal with Ohio now, right? So Syracuse week 1, Duquesne's week 2, and now Louisiana week 3. Louisiana, of course, still a really good team. Probably every Ohio fan saw this loss coming, but to go 0-3 to start their season, maybe 1-2, right? You would think they would at least beat Duquesne's. So Ohio's got some things to work out there. We'll see if they can get it turned around. Again, was my preseason pick to make the Mid-American Championship game. Probably not looking the best right now. 2 games on Friday. I'm going to talk a lot about this one. First one up here, so buckle in, get settled in, let's go. UCF in Louisville. This was a good game throughout. This really was a good game throughout. When you look at the respective stats for the quarterbacks, Dillon Gabriel didn't have his best game, and he also got injured in this play, has a broken clavicle. They said it doesn't require surgery. Got hurt on the final play of the game. So playing a full game, he had 188 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick. When you look at Cunningham on the other side, 265 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and on the ground, 13 carries for 99 yards and 2 scores. For Gabriel, his season's not done. I think when a lot of people thought he went down, that it probably looked worse than it was. But it kind of shocked me that also his season isn't done. There's no timetable for his return, but he broke his clavicle, which is like the bone like in your neck. He basically broke his neck, and he doesn't need surgery. So interesting thing that happened there for Dillon Gabriel. I hope he gets back on the field at some point this year. Again, one of the better quarterbacks in the nation. But you'd have to think he's out for that game against Cincinnati now, right? Interesting storyline to keep an eye on there. And then the end of the game. So the final 2 minutes of this game were crazy, absolutely insane. The Cardinals got the ball back and things were looking good. You know, they were going to win. And then Cunningham threw that pick that I had mentioned earlier, right? Through that pick, UCF had great field position. They were at like the 38-yard line, something like that. And all I kept thinking was, okay, UCF has now got this game in the bag. They're going to go down and score. I already had the records up on the board. They're going to go down, kick a game-winning field goal, and win this thing because it was tied at that point, right? And then Louisville had other ideas. So they chose to run the ball here, they chose not to run the ball. What I meant to say, they chose to throw the ball with Gabriel. And then this happened. Jalen Alderman, a game-winning 66-yard pick six after the Cunningham pick, literally the next play. Sorry, I hit my mic. I couldn't believe what happened while watching that game. Insane, crazy ending. A great win for Louisville. And now without Dillon Gabriel, we'll see what happens with UCF. But probably not good things. UCF wasn't their normal self this week anyway. Only 420 total yards. They were outgained in this game, which isn't like UCF, and only 2 for 10 on third down. And so they got things to clean up from this game. And now without Gabriel, what happens to UCF? I think we're going to find out in the coming weeks. They got some pretty interesting games again, including that one against Cincinnati. All right, talked about that game for a long time. Let's move on. Maryland and Illinois. This was one of the classic, like, Big Ten fight it out, like the classic Big Ten battles. Was a really interesting game to watch. And Maryland has continued the notion that they don't have offense past the first 2 games of the season. I thought that would change this year, but this game showed otherwise, because Illinois' defense didn't play terribly great this game, but Maryland struggled to find the end zone. However, still won the game off Joseph Petrino's game-winning 32-yard field goal. So Maryland gets the win. They stay undefeated. And Maryland, still, while being a good team, again, this was just one of those classic Big Ten games in the trenches, fighting it out. One of the Big Ten battles, like classic Big Ten football showcased here. We'll see what happens with Maryland down the stretch. And for Illinois, well, you win your first game at Nebraska, and now you've dropped your last 3. What happens with the Fighting Irish from here, right? Not Fighting Irish, Fighting Illini. We'll talk about the Fighting Irish over here. Fighting Illini. I just woke up, guys. Sorry. All right. Saturday. Again, full slate of games on Saturday. Not as many games as we've had in the previous weeks. As you see, I didn't have to use a 5th column. So let's get into it, shall we? Texas A&M with a pretty easy win over New Mexico, as did Michigan have a really easy win over Northern Illinois. I still want to see Michigan get their passing game going more, because Michigan has shown that with their running game alone, they can contend in the Big Ten and they can contend nationally, but their passing game, like, they had that crazy bomb throw yesterday, but overall, I just want to see it get better. I want to see it more consistent, but great win for the Wolverines. 52-21 was the final score of the Army-UConn game. As you see there, UConn falls to 0-4. Army continues an undefeated season, as does Oklahoma, but it wasn't as easy as some people might have expected. Let's talk about this one a little bit. So the 50th anniversary of the game of the century between number 1 and number 2, Oklahoma and Nebraska, back in 1971. Of course, I wasn't alive then, so I wouldn't remember it. Maybe some of you guys might if you're old enough, but again, Martinez statistically outplayed Rattler in this game. 289 yards to Rattler's 14, or 214, I should say. A touchdown for each quarterback, and an interception thrown by Martinez, which that interception might be one of the greatest catches I've ever seen. Period. End of story. That might be the greatest catch I've ever seen. And I've seen some good catches. I remember watching the Odell catch live. Not like in the stadium, like live on TV. I've seen some crazy catches by Penn State wide receivers over Ohio State players. I've seen lots of crazy things. That interception by DJ Graham might be catch of the year, and it's by a defensive player. Absolutely nasty pick. That pick was insane. Yeah, I that pick was insane, and that kind of sealed Nebraska's fate. So Nebraska went down the score. The score was 9-14, and I even texted my mom, because we live in Nebraska, even though I'm an Ohio State fan. We live in Nebraska, and I'm like, "Hey, look, Nebraska's making this one close." And then as soon as I hit the send button, the point after gets blocked and returned for a 2-point conversion. And the only thing I texted her back was, the beauty of Husker football. But hey, if you're a Nebraska fan coming out of this one, you got to feel pretty good coming out of this one, right? This should be a nice confidence booster for this Nebraska team. Now that you only lost to 7 points against Oklahoma, the number 3 ranked team in the nation, on the road. So you got to be feeling pretty good about that. Connor Culp kept missing kicks in this game. I don't know what needs to change with Connor Culp. He was the Big Ten kicker of the year last year. He is not looking at all like the Big Ten kicker of the year last year. This year, not looking like that this year at all. So something's got to change with Nebraska kicking. Nebraska's offensive line was also shooting itself in the foot in this game. Lots of penalties on the offensive line. Lots of holdings, lots of false starts. And that killed Nebraska in this game, because I think Nebraska had a shot down the stretch. Again, slim shot, but they had a shot. Maybe without those penalties, maybe they could have tied this game. We'll never know. Oklahoma escapes their home stadium with a win. Kentucky also escapes with the win, as they barely got by Chattanooga. But the SEC team that they beat last week in Missouri. Well, they handled Southeast Missouri State pretty well. Boston College handled Temple, and this was something I didn't mention last week because A, I kind of didn't know it happened, and B, there wasn't a full-on report about it. But Phil Jurkovec, he's possibly done for the season. And that happened back last week in Boston College's game against UMass. And then Dennis Grossell came in and played pretty well for the Eagles. But in this game, he just wasn't. Only 34 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The total yardage in this game for both of these teams, 221 to 245. So without Jurkovec, we'll see what Boston College can be. They continue an undefeated season, but Jurkovec possibly could be done for the season after having surgery on his hand. So we'll see what happens there, right? Coastal Carolina and Buffalo. This was a fun game to watch. Coastal Carolina seemed to have this one in the bag for the most part. Buffalo made it close towards the end. A couple late turnovers, but overall, great game to watch by both of these teams. Buffalo absolutely can contend in the Mid-American. I still think Coastal Carolina should be the favorite to win the Sun Belt Championship this year. Shamari Jones for Coastal Carolina, 16 carries, 149 yards, and a touchdown. So a great game for him there. Coastal Carolina escapes Buffalo with a win. Syracuse is able to beat Albany, as is Tennessee able to beat Tennessee Tech. Now, we're going to talk about some of these games down here, and I promise the review will go a lot faster once we get into these games here. I know these videos are long. For those of you that watch them, I really appreciate you. This third from the bottom game in the first column right here, Virginia Tech at West Virginia. Let's talk about that one. So Virginia Tech just wasn't really looking the best, but also you could credit that to West Virginia's stout defense. Like, West Virginia's defense played a really good game yesterday. They played a really good game. Virginia Tech was down 27-7 with 4 minutes and 21 seconds left in the third quarter. And there were two late turnovers. Not lots, only two late turnovers that helped Virginia Tech get back into this game. So they made it 27-14 and then stripped Deggy. The quarterback got the ball, went down the score. And then Deggy threw an interception to go along with 193 yards and 2 touchdowns, threw a pick that helped Virginia Tech get all the way down to the goal line on 4th and goal, and West Virginia stops them. They stuff them at the line, and West Virginia pulls off the upset, even though technically it wasn't an upset because they were favored, but it's an upset because it's against a ranked team. So do with that what you will, right? Burmeister played well, I thought, at times during this game, 223 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then when you look at the rushing game for Letty Brown, broke open the scoring. A very nice run, or a very nice hole opened up by the offensive line, and a very nice run. And his total stat line, 19 carries, 161 yards, and 1 touchdown. So for Virginia Tech, do they fall out of the top 25? As of recording this video, the top 25 poll has not been released yet. And I usually don't look at the top 25 polls until after I make my top 25 poll. Right? So Virginia Tech, do they fall out? Probably not. I'm going to say they stay at like 24, 25. Again, you guys will know by the time this video comes out. But also West Virginia, in my mind, they should move in. We'll talk about another team that's going to move in here a little bit. But West Virginia still has shown they got a really good defense. They have the offense to go with it as well. Tech's defense did not look up to the task in the first half. They came to play in the second, but it was too little too late as the number 15th ranked team in the nation goes down. Western Michigan pulls off an upset against Pitt. What happened in that game? Sorry for the voice crack, but what happened in that game? I'm interested to know if anyone out there watched the game. Tell me what happened. All I could do was look at stat lines, and it looked fairly even. There were lots of good games spread around, lots of great stat lines, and I just don't have time to go through and list all of them. But I thought Pickett played well, or so it seemed. Again, I will outright say when I didn't watch a game, I did not watch this game. Mainly because it was on ESPN3, and then there was a weird thing. Normally I can watch the ESPN3 games, but I couldn't with this one. Thanks, ESPN. But no, so couldn't watch that one. Those of you that did, you'll have to tell me what happens. But overall, good win for Western Michigan. Pitt's got some work to do, it seems, especially on the defensive side, allowing 44 points in this game. Tell you a team that doesn't need work, Michigan State. Well, they still need work, right? Team that does need work, though, is Miami. If you want to talk about the biggest disappointments of the season so far, Miami's probably number one on that list. Peyton Thorne played well for Michigan State, 261 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I said in my preview, Kenneth Walker's got to have a big game. Here you go. 27 carries, 172 yards, and a touchdown. D'Eriq King finally had that big game, although I'm not going to call it a big game because he threw 59 passes. He threw the ball 59 times for 388 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. So we haven't really seen the D'Eriq King of old as of late. And I'm really confused as to why Miami hasn't gotten things together, because they have the talent, and I think at times they've played really well this season. It just hasn't happened yet. And for Michigan State, hey, the Spartans have been proving me wrong all season. There you go. I didn't think Michigan State was going to be that great this year, and they went out on the field and they proved me wrong. They proved me wrong in this game. They proved that they are a threat to a lot of the teams in the Big Ten, or at least the Big Ten should, keep their eyes open, right? This is a team here in Michigan State that I think can be really dangerous come Big Ten play. So they get Nebraska next week. I think that's going to be an interesting game. It's on the road for Nebraska, so it's in Spartan Stadium. We'll see what happens with that one, because if Nebraska is able to pull off that win, again, it could create some interesting conversation. So might be previewing that one next week. Who knows? All right, moving into the second column now. Michigan State, great win. A great win for them. Miami, probably the most overrated team coming into this year. And I thought people were pumping the brake, or I thought people had to pump the brakes on the Miami sucks train. Now I'll listen to that, because Miami has yet to prove that they are worthy of being the team that we thought that they were going to be. But the team that hasn't is Cincinnati, right up here, 38-24 with the win over Indiana. Penix threw 3 picks in this game. I don't know what's happening with Penix this year. He's just more like mistake prone, it seems, which is really weird, because normally Michael Penix is pretty solid with not throwing picks, but this year already has a lot. Indiana had 4 turnovers in total, so had a fumble tacked on. A lot of late turnovers helped get Cincinnati back in this game, including not a turnover, but Trey Tucker for Cincinnati, a 99-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. That pushed Cincinnati to the lead. Indiana would get it back. It'd be 24-23. But again, those late turnovers were costly, as it makes Indiana lose this game up here. Cincinnati has proven now that they can be a playoff worthy team. When you look at past history and this year, just the way that they've played, and now beating a team like Indiana, they have a shot here. So they have a bye week next week, but they have a shot in a couple of weeks to really open the door in the college football playoff conversation. And I'll talk more about the playoff here in a little bit and what I'm going to do. But Cincinnati, watch out for the Bearcats, because if they can beat Notre Dame in a couple of weeks and then run the table in American athletic play handedly, we could be seeing some interesting conversations later down the road. Minnesota shuts out Colorado. I was surprised to see this fact. I thought this would be a closer game than this was, but Colorado only had 63 yards of total offense, which I was surprised at the fact of that. Minnesota played a great game defensively. Again, couldn't watch it because it's on the Pac-12 network. Thanks. Thanks, Big Ten. Why didn't you pick that one up? But no, it's a home game for the Pac-12, so Pac-12 network makes sense. And again, to Minnesota fans that are worried about Mo Ibrahim, you should be, but Trayson Potts is not a bad back himself. 26 carries, 121 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I think you guys are going to be fine. If you're a Minnesota fan, I know I definitely have one in my comment section. Hi, how you doing? Trayson Potts is still a really good back. And for this Colorado offense, yeah, So was that offensive struggles against Texas A&M, or was that Colorado having a good game? Because if it was offensive struggles, then yep, it continued here in this game. We'll see what happens with Colorado later down the line, but disappointing showing for the Buffaloes yesterday. And also, in my opinion, disappointing showing for Nevada, who I thought could have kept this game closer. And I kind of indirectly picked Nevada to win too, in my preview prediction video. But 17-38, the final score, just not really what I expected to see out of Nevada. Although, albeit Kansas State did play some pretty good defense. And what I say would happen, Nevada would split their two Power 5 non-conference opponents on the road. I just had the wrong prediction at the beginning of the year. But they go into Mountain West, play 2-1. You have to think they're feeling pretty good. But after a loss like that, who knows? And Kansas State even did it without Skylar Thompson. So we'll see if Kansas State can continue to push their way towards a top 25 team. Right now, they'd probably be on the outside looking in my mind, but maybe they find their way into the poll. Again, you guys will know. As of recording this video, I don't know, but as of this video coming out, more than likely you guys will know. Notre Dame's offensive line finally got their stuff together. They're able to beat Purdue, and Brian Kelly ties the program record for wins with 105, and you'd have to think that he'd break that sometime this year, right? But although when you look at the next 5 games for Notre Dame, it's tough. It's real tough. There are 5 opponents. All of them were ranked at some point during the season, or again, still are currently ranked. And all of them have a bye going into their game against Notre Dame. So Wisconsin, who plays them next week again, has a bye. And then Cincinnati, of course, I just mentioned, has a bye next week, plays them the week after, and the list goes on and on. So interesting thing there for Notre Dame. We'll see if they can contend with it. But I thought that's a good win for Notre Dame. Interesting story here. Notre Dame told Purdue that their world famous big drum was too big. Guess what? They brought it anyway, just kept it outside the stadium. There you go. But no, I used to be a percussionist. So, well, technically still am, but not in the band here at my college. But yeah, I just thought that was a fun storyline for me anyway. You might get a kick out as well if you've made it this far without skipping anything. Oregon State beats. All right, so now time to run through some games really quickly, right? All right, Oregon State beats Idaho. Pretty easy win there. Miami of Ohio beats Long Island. Again, pretty easy win for them there. App State beats Elon. App State's a much better team coming into this year than I thought, and they might be the second best team in the Sun Belt. I think it's a lot closer than people think between App State and up here with Louisiana. I still think Louisiana's the second best right now. Who knows? App State might pass them, but Coastal Carolina definitely takes that number 1 spot. But App State looking really good so far this year. Akron pulls off a pretty big win here against Bryant, and they got a lot of offense in the game. Now, albeit it's Bryant, not that great FCS school. And Akron gets Ohio State next. So we'll see. Probably going to end up losing that game more likely than not. In fact, probably already put the win in the win books, but again, with this Ohio State defense, you never know. I'll talk about that later. Baylor beats Kansas, handles Kansas 45-7. So a good win there for Baylor. Again, did not watch the game, but sounds like Baylor played well and Kansas was being Kansas. Right, moving on. Eastern Michigan beats UMass as UMass keeps the undefeated season alive. The winless. Oh, okay. They keep the winless season alive as Eastern Michigan improves to 2-1. Iowa keeps the undefeated. Iowa actually keeps the undefeated season alive. The 5th ranked team in the nation. They beat Kent State pretty easily. Tyler Goodson, good game for him. 22 carries, 153 yards, and 3 touchdowns. As Iowa, again, solidifying themselves as a top 5 team. They have Colorado State up next before they have to get into the Big Ten play. And that showdown with Penn State is looming, right? That's going to be a huge matchup if both teams can come into that game unscathed, which it seems likely now up to this point. Again, we'll talk about Penn State in a little bit. Wake Forest beats Florida State. What's going on with Florida State? So they played both Milton and Travis in this game. Milton was, I believe, no, Travis might have come out first. I don't know. I didn't watch the first couple drives of this game because I was, again, watching other games before that. But for this game here, like Florida State's always had the talent. It's just never gelled in the past couple of years. So something's got to change with this Florida State program. And I don't know what that might be. So they played Milton and Travis in this game. You can argue who had the better stat line. To me, it's Travis because he actually had touchdown passes. Milton had 119 yards, no touchdown passes, and 2 picks. Travis had 107 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. And that's 3 interceptions to go along with 3 fumbles. You guessed it. That's 6 Seminole turnovers. 6. And again, that's why they lost this game. They turned the ball over 6 times. You normally only get 8 to 10 drives a game. That's 6 turnovers. That's around 50% of the time they had the ball, they were turning the ball over. Wake Forest did have some turnovers, but they only had 2. So it didn't make a huge difference, but Wake Forest keeps the undefeated season alive, beats Florida State. So now Florida State wants to make a bowl game. They have to win 6 out of their last 9. And something tells me that's not going to be easy to do, just with who they have left on their schedule, and with what I've seen from Florida State up to this point. Rutgers beats a good Delaware team by 32 points. Rutgers is also a team to watch out for. I know they haven't played the best competition in non-conference, but that's a team you got to watch out for in Rutgers. They get a nice win there against the Blue Hens in Delaware. After scoring the first 14 points of the game, USC comes out and scores 45 unanswered as they had to turn to backup quarterback Jackson Dart as Keaton Slovis went down with an injury. And who knows, Jackson Dart might be named the starter next week with the way he played in this game. 391 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions for Jackson Dart. Again, the 2 picks, you can forgive him. But wow, what a performance from Jackson Dart. What a performance from Drake London, too. Jackson Dart knows who his favorite target is and knows who the best receiver on this team is. 13 catches, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Drake London as USC opens up the Clay Helton-less era with a very, very convincing win. And speaking of convincing, look at this one right here. Wyoming beating Ball State. So this result surprised me. So Wyoming had that shootout win last week against Northern Iowa. Again, game-winning drive. They keep their undefeated season alive here, but against Ball State, I kind of expected Ball State to struggle in this one. Again, indirectly, I would have picked Ball State. I'll tell you that much, but offensive struggles for Ball State seems to be the thing, right? The offense struggled to get anything going in that game. Drew Plitt wasn't on point. He ended up actually getting pulled sometime during this game. So yeah, what's happening with Ball State, right? Wyoming keeps the undefeated season alive. They can be a sneaky team in the Mountain West, so watch out for the Cowboys. But as for Ball State, they got work to do. Again, my preseason pick to win the MAC, so neither of my Mid-American picks are looking great right now. So let's move on to potentially the game of the week. Number 1 against number 11. This was some game. Hold on, give me 1 sec. Ooh, all right, that's better. All right, number 1 versus number 11. This was some game. So Alabama led 21-3 after the first quarter, and it looked like, oh, Bama's going to have another blowout win, right? Bama's going to blow them out again. No. We never saw Anthony Richardson in this game. I don't believe, and again, I always like pan. I have like 6 games going on at once, so I always like pan over to a game and watch a play, then pan over to another game, watch a play. So there were some plays I might have missed them, but for the plays I saw, Anthony Richardson was never on the field for Florida. But Florida's rushing attack that ranks number 1 in the nation should continue to do so. 245 rushing yards to Bama's 91. And Florida's defense played a great second half, and they actually outgained Bama in this game, 440 to 331 in the total yard front. So the number 1 team in the nation looked vulnerable. They did. They looked vulnerable, They looked like they could be beaten. And now we know that if you cut Alabama, they will bleed. Definitely still got some things to work on for Bama and for Florida as well. But Florida could have definitely tied this game, might potentially would have won it in overtime, but again, we'll never know. Just a mistake when trying to run the read option up the middle. Emory Jones just held onto the ball for too long, and Bama was able to stop the 2-point conversion try as Bama escapes the swamp with a win. Should still be the number 1 team in the nation, but got a game in a cup. They get Southern Miss next week, so should be an easy one, but then they have Ole Miss, Texas A&M. So should be interesting to see what happens with Bama from here. SMU wins on a game-winning Hail Mary play. Tanner Mordecai played great, 395 yards and 5 touchdowns as Reggie Roberson, however you say it, Reggie Roberson, 33-yard game-winning Hail Mary catch. Louisiana Tech just didn't bat the ball down, tipped it up in the air, caught by Robertson, and SMU comes away with a win. What a win for SMU as they keep that undefeated season alive. I had the score on the board here, 37-33 for the longest time until I saw the highlight, and I'm like, wait, what? And then I had to come back and change it to 39. So there you go. 45-10 final score. Arkansas rolling in that one. Ohio State continues to have defensive struggles. So Kerry Coombs wasn't calling plays for Ohio State in this one. It was actually the secondary coach, but nothing on the defensive side seemed to change, right? So Ohio State comes away with a win, but the final score will tell you the final score will tell you it was more lopsided than it was. It was a close game throughout, and CJ Stroud did not have his best game, nor did the Ohio State defense. Definitely a lot of things to work on. Again, you have Akron next week, so hopefully you still get to see some improvement. I thought at times Ohio State's defense played pretty well yesterday, but again, lots of things to improve on. But someone who doesn't need to improve on a whole lot, at least as of right now, Travion Henderson. Wow. 24 carries, 277 yards, and 3 touchdowns for the freshman. Breaks the Ohio State freshman record for most yards in a single game. Ohio State comes out with a win. Lots of stuff to work on there if they want to get back to the top of the mountain. All right, I am going to move over to this side now, just because. So, excuse me for one sec while I move. All right, there we go. Better. Sorry, I had to go plug my computer in because it was going to die. You can't have it die in the middle of recording, right? All right, middle column time now. Northwestern couldn't get past Duke. Blue Devils had a good game in that one. And again, Northwestern continuing to look shaky. So we'll see what happens with both those teams down the road. But Duke gets a good win this week. So does Cal. Although Cal, I thought, could have played better in this one. Again, couldn't watch the game. But gets the win over Sacramento State. This result surprised me right here. Colorado State beating Toledo. With the way that Colorado State has played this year, you would kind of get the feeling that, well, Toledo would not necessarily roll in this one, but get the win. So Toledo seems to have some struggles of their own. We'll see what happens with both those teams down the road. All right, Washington finally gets in the win column as they are able to beat Arkansas State. And Memphis comes away with a win against Mississippi State. So let's talk about this game right here. So Calvin Austin, this is really the only thing I want to talk about with this game. Calvin Austin on the receiving end, 9 catches, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But a 94-yard punt return touchdown. So let's talk about it. So what happens is the ball gets booted down to like the 1 or 2 yard line or something like that. And a Mississippi State player tips it back, right? Tips it back. And then what happens is there's another Mississippi State special teams player that goes up and just like kind of touches it, but doesn't get like full control or whatever, like doesn't like pick it up and then possess it and like down it. And technically the rule is that's a live ball. So what Calvin Austin does, really smart play, picks it up and runs it the other way. I know Mississippi State fans aren't happy about it. Technically, it's the right call. I don't have a huge opinion on this because I saw it and I'm just like, wow, that probably shouldn't have happened. Because like Mississippi State players gave up. So this is the thing where you can fault whoever you want. You can fault the refs. You can fault the players. I will argue that if the player from Mississippi State would have picked up the ball, that return never would have happened, and they could have escaped with the win. At the time, it was 21-17, so we won't know. But we have no idea if Memphis would have gone down and scored or not. But right. So if you have a strong opinion about that, please leave it in the comment section below. But otherwise, let's continue on. Again, I'm going to be flying through some of these games, as again, just a lot of games that I wasn't able to watch. Bowling Green, excuse me. Bowling Green beats Murray State, so a good win there for Bowling Green. I think Murray State was actually the favorite in this game, which I found pretty funny. But Bowling Green comes out and wins. Clemson's offense continues to struggle. Clemson only had 284 yards of offense, but they're able to escape Georgia Tech with a win here, 14-8. On their in Death Valley, again, this was after a rain delay. The game got delayed, pushed back. But again, probably should have won by more than that. They weren't playing Georgia. They were playing Georgia Tech. So hopefully Clemson can get that offense going. But the ACC might miss out on the college football playoff this year if Clemson can't get that going. Couple nice wins here for Liberty and UTSA. I know I'm skipping that one. I'll talk about it later. Nice wins for Liberty, UTSA, Georgia State, Houston, and Troy as they beat their fellow opponents. This one kind of shocked me here, the Georgia State win. I thought Charlotte would play a better game. The last didn't happen. So Georgia State gets their first win of the year. All right, let's go back to this game here. East Carolina and Marshall. So East Carolina was down in this game. They were down 38-21 with 1 minute and 3 seconds left in the third quarter. But Holton Ahlers, 368 yards, 2 touchdowns, led them for the most part to this comeback. There were a couple of nice performances on the Marshall side as well. Grant Wells, the quarterback, had a good game, 433 yards, passing through the air. Rasheen Ali, running back there, 24 carries, 189 yards, 3 touchdowns, but it was not enough. East Carolina gets their first win of the year as they beat Marshall. Moving back down here, good win for NC State and Texas Tech as NC State improves 2-1. Texas Tech keeps the undefeated season alive. Georgia looks unstoppable. 40 points and a 40-13 win over South Carolina. JT Daniels back on the field for that one. So Georgia continuing to look like a top 5 team in the nation. Good win there for the Bulldogs. South Florida able to win. And then Incarnate Word, they beat Texas State. And when you look on paper, it seemed like a pretty even game. Like there weren't any huge turnovers. The time of possession difference wasn't huge. So what happened in this one, that I can't answer because, again, didn't watch it. But Incarnate Word able to beat Texas State. After another delay, Florida Atlantic is able to beat Fordham. Pretty easy win for them there. Moving on to the final column, LSU able to beat Central Michigan pretty easily, and UAB able to beat North Texas pretty easily. So I always thought North Texas was going to be this solid team, a team that was going to come out and surprise everyone. So either North Texas is worse than I had first thought, or UAB is just that good. Tyler Johnson didn't play that well in this game. He got pulled, and they ended up starting the backup, who actually went out and played really well. But for UAB, after that monstrous defeat to Georgia last week, you come back with a blowout victory of your own. Let's talk about this one here now, right? Utah and San Diego State. Wow. So San Diego State was actually up 24-10 late in this game. Utah was able to battle back and force overtime as Charlie Brewer actually got pulled during this game for Utah. And they put in Cameron Rising. He played pretty well, 153 yards and 3 touchdowns. I believe was the starter last year before like the injury thing happened, right? Was going to be the starter, but then went down with an injury. And yeah, so for Cameron Rising, great game for him. Utah ended up coming up just short. Here's what happened in overtime. By the way, they went into triple overtime. You probably can't see that unless you have really good eyes. I promise that's a 3 OT right there. So they had touchdowns in the first overtime, each team did. Then each team missed a field goal in the second. And then after the second overtime, you're supposed to just alternate 2-point conversions. San Diego State got theirs, and Utah almost got theirs It was ruled a catch at first, but was reviewed, and they said incomplete. San Diego State walks away with a win. All right, another big game here. Auburn playing Penn State. Bo Nix, only 185 yards in this game. No touchdown, no picks, no nothing special. Tank Bigsby, though, kind of carried this Auburn offense. 23 carries, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But you can't rely on Tank Bigsby alone. Sean Clifford had probably the best game of his career. 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. So stat-wise, it doesn't seem like it. But if you watch the game, you watch how he played. He had one of the better games of his career for Sean Clifford. Getting Jahan Dotson involved, getting Parker Washington involved as well, as Penn State gets to a nice win in the whiteout in Happy Valley. Again, tough place to play. This Auburn team was a lot better than I had previously suspected. Again, it was a team that, well, not necessarily, I guess I should rephrase that, not necessarily better than what I expected, but I think they contended better than I expected in this game. For Auburn, they have a long, difficult schedule ahead, so we'll see how they persevere through that. And for Penn State, a couple pretty easy ones, and then you get Iowa in a couple of weeks, so watch out for that one. Utah State is able to outlast Air Force as they keep their undefeated season alive. North Carolina is starting to look better and better each week, although Armstrong, the quarterback for UVA, 554 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. When you look at Sam Howell, hey, he's playing like a Heisman contender. 307 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a pick. 15 carries, 112 yards on the ground as well for Sam Howell. So a great game for Sam Howell. North Carolina's offense explodes. Ty Chandler had almost 200 yards on the ground. Josh Downs had 200 yards receiving. Both of the players I just mentioned, 2 touchdowns apiece. As North Carolina struggled early, I believe was also down at halftime, able to come back and win this one. All right. Texas shuts out Rice as Bijan Robinson has 3 touchdowns, 127 yards on only 13 carries. Texas still, I don't think, is back because it's Rice. But we'll see how Texas does once they get into Big 12 play, which happens next week. Oregon is able to beat Stony Brook. Easy win there for Oregon. New Mexico State gets in the win column with a rough win over South Carolina State as they fall to 0-3. Surprising there that South Carolina State fall. Well, not necessarily surprising because they played Clemson last week, then New Mexico State this week. But again, close game. I knew it was going to be a close game because, again, New Mexico State not very good, comparatively speaking to the rest of the FBS. But they're able to get the win in the win column. Vanderbilt kept this game close for a lot of the first half. It was relatively close going into halftime, and then Stanford ended up blowing the doors off of them after half, able to come away with a win. ULM beating Jackson State 12-7. So I kind of didn't expect ULM to win this game, yet they did. So a good win there for ULM. See what happens later down the road, right? All right, Boise State was up 20-7 with 2 minutes and 26 seconds left in the second quarter. What does Oklahoma State do? Score 14 unanswered points in the second quarter. There was no scoring in the second half. And they actually did it while Spencer Sanders wasn't having his best game. Only 82 yards through the air. And when you look at a guy like Jalen Warren, 32 carries, 218 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground for the Oklahoma State back. Really good game for him. That's what propelled them to this win. Again, just a lackluster second half. Really, just a lackluster second half for both of these teams. Oklahoma State able to come away with a win. South Alabama beats Alcorn State, but Jalen Tolbert wasn't the guy in this one. It was Kareem Walker, 23 carries, 150 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The running back for South Alabama helps push them to the win. Can anyone slow down this Ole Miss offense? Please, I would like to know. 61 points, and I don't even think they scored in the fourth quarter. Matt Corral had himself a day. 335 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, while 13 carries, 68 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns, while the Ole Miss team as a whole, 41 first downs, 707 total yards of offense. They get the 40-point win over Tulane. I still think Tulane is a lot better of a team than most people thought coming into this year. They've just had a tough schedule up to this point, and I think they're going to prove how good of a team they are once they get into American Athletic Conference play. We'll just have to wait and see. Ole Miss, we'll see how they handle the SEC slate. Northern Arizona beats regular Arizona behind Kevin Daniels, 27 carries, 127 yards, and 1 touchdown for Northern Arizona as they're able to outlast the Wildcats. Again, another FCS team beating another FCS team beating an FBS team. And this one down here, what a game to watch. Arizona State shot themselves in the foot with penalties all throughout the day. 16 total penalties for 121 yards. That just can't happen. Albeit Arizona State played a solid game on offense minus the penalties, but the penalties is what killed. I mean, if they would have had half that number of penalties, who knows what the final score would have been. But Arizona State was still playing well. It's just BYU played better. BYU played better. And when you're looking at this year's BYU team and last year's, I'm going to argue that this year's BYU team is better because they're more proven right now. Yes, they don't have the NFL level talent of Zach Wilson, but I still think Jaren Hall is a good quarterback. And Zach Wilson, even again, his first year starting in 2019, he looked good. And then the year after, he looked NFL good. I think we could be seeing a similar scenario play out with Jaren Hall in the coming years. BYU has got some pretty interesting games left on the schedule, but they can make the conversation interesting for that group of 5 spot. Because they should be favored in every game they have down the road. Should be. Maybe that last weekend against USC, they're not, but every other game, they should be favored. Still got some tricky ones left. See what happens in Provo. Iowa State rolls to a win. Brock Purdy near perfect as they roll to a win. And how about Fresno State? You want to talk about making Oregon look, wow. Oregon looks really good now. Because of that win by Fresno State. Honestly, what a game. And what a performance from Jake Haener, the quarterback at Fresno State. 455 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, and led a game-winning drive in 55 seconds while he was writhing in pain. I stayed up to watch this one. It was about 1 a.m. my time. I actually found a live stream of it on YouTube, so thank you to whoever live streamed that. I ended up watching. I wouldn't be able to watch it otherwise because it was on the Pac-12 network, and I would have had to been flying dark with this or flying blind. But no, Ronnie Rivers, great game for him for Fresno State. Great game for Jalen Cropper as well. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson had the best throwing game of his career, or not of his career, of the season. But then you also got, well, UCLA's running game wasn't in full force today, or I guess yesterday. UCLA's run game wasn't in full force yesterday. So that's another thing. UCLA's got to get consistent on both sides of the ball. Do we have to pump the brakes on the UCLA hype train? I'm going to say maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens once UCLA gets in the Pac-12 play, because that game against Oregon could prove to be a pretty solid game. Pretty good game to watch, but lots of good games for UCLA down the road. They have chances to redeem themselves, but honestly, guys, Fresno State is just a good team. They're a good team. I'm totally fine with being wrong. Predictions are predictions for a reason. You don't know what's going to happen. The world of sports is unpredictable. And Fresno State was a team that I just kind of overlooked. I didn't really look into a lot. Was a team that, again, I just kind of looked right past. I shouldn't have done that because this team, spoiler alert, they're going to be in my top 25 next week. Where? You're going to have to find out. But that Fresno State team, wow. What a team that is, and what passion from Jake Haener. We'll look at the injury report of him later. Again, if one comes out, but he was hobbled down the line. Didn't stop him from throwing a game-winning drive, putting together a game-winning drive. See what happens with him later. And then the game that no one watches because it happens at midnight, unless, of course, you're on the West Coast. San Jose State beats Hawaii there. So I'm going to move over here a little bit. Bye weeks, you see the teams that have bye weeks up here. But yeah, that's going to do it for my review, guys. It was another interesting week in the world of college football. Saw some upsets, saw some big wins. I do want to talk about this. I haven't done like updated playoff predictions or anything like that because I wanted to give it time, right? I wanted to give it time where I wanted to give time for the season to develop. I don't like making playoff predictions 1, 2, 3 weeks into the season. Well, 3 weeks, right? So we're 3 weeks into the season, and while I'm not going to give official predictions on who I think will make the playoff, I am going to be giving you the playoff picture. So, like, what has happened? What does the playoff picture look like? Spoiler alert, it's wide open right now. So that video hopefully should be coming sometime this week. If not, it's because I was busy with school and job and other things. And it will definitely come the week after. But that's coming soon, I promise. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I know this review was longer than a lot of the other reviews, even though it was technically a shorter week, but it was an exciting week. A lot to talk about as always. If you made it through to the end of the video without skipping, wow, thank you so much. If you like what you see from me, subscribe, like, comment, do all that fun stuff. Again, show you guys the scoreboard. I'll see you guys tomorrow with my top 25. Goodbye.